But Tanya Gadsby is the founder of Fuselight. You can find him at thefuselight.com, which is a graphic facilitation and animation studio. She has 16 years of experience working with audience engagement, and she's particularly passionate about exploring augmented reality and virtual reality in conjunction with graphic facilitation. And I'm going to say it again, Tanya has very generously decided to donate her proceeds from this event to the Buddy Whitethorn Foundation, which provides art education and scholarships to Indigenous people. And so with no further ado, Tanya, let me go ahead and turn it over to you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Brian, for that wonderful introduction. And I'm so glad to see all of you here. As Brian mentioned, this is my passion, AR, also animation, and all the lovely digital storytelling avenues we have available. And exploring how that works with graphic facilitation and graphic recording. I want to hopefully inspire you guys to pursue it or explore it in whatever capacity makes sense for you. You don't have to go as deep as I have, which is into the coding, into the programming. That's not my background at all. So it is a bit of a lot of hundreds of hours of work, I have to say, that I've put into this over the last 18 months in particular. So there are different avenues and ways of using this. So keep that in mind when I'm going through the presentation today. And I'm just going to share my screen here, and I'm going to do a little portion of my screen. It just makes it easier for me to monitor things. So just let me get that set up here for you. All right. Okay, everybody can see things pretty clearly here. Brian, good? Yeah, all right. So as Brian mentioned, we're just going to do a bit of an intro to AR and how it works through the lens of graphic facilitation and graphic recording. And I have to say that's a bit of a niche. Most of the information out there is very focused on marketers, people just pushing out and selling content, or gamers. So this is a unique lens that I'm looking at it from, as well as accessibility and how that works best for people, not just assuming we're all tech savvy people who can access this all the time, let alone our clients and our audiences. So that's sort of where I come at it. We are probably just going to cover over a little bit of an overview of what it is. And for those of you who maybe have seen me speak about this previously, I gave presentations at IFBP and for the IAF. There is some content that's similar here, but there is also some new content because, as I mentioned, this is always evolving very quickly. So there's, gosh, it's hard to keep up sometimes. So there's always new stuff coming out. We may have a breakout if there's time. We may just speak in a small in our group here. Depends how the conversation is going. I'm interested to hear from all of you. You're very much respected colleagues in this field of mine, and I want to hear your perspectives on challenges or opportunities that we may have overlooked in our explorations of this. I think we should start with a little bit of a poll. Brian kind of did a hands up for the Nova Scribes participation, but I want to know a little bit about how much experience you have using AR. So yeah, there's our poll. It's up on the screen there. Perfect. I'll just give you guys a few seconds to answer that.
Okay, it looks like we've got 17 out of 19, and I think you and I are 18 and 19.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, let's see our results. Excellent. Okay, none for a lot of you. And I always like doing this because it's good to get a sense of the variety of experience we have in the room. Some of you have tried it once or twice. Some have used it occasionally. And wow, 6%. I use it often as part of my work. That's fascinating. I'm keen to hear from you. I hope you speak up if there's things that you want to share throughout this. All right, very cool. And just a really brief primer on us, Brian did mention a little bit about Fuselight and what we're passionate about, a lot of digital stuff, a lot of working in unique ways to engage audiences. So that's the foundation that led us to exploring AR a lot more. A lot of animation work as well, as we mentioned, and interactive, getting hands-on with the graphics, not just producing something that doesn't change or doesn't evolve. And that's sort of where we got into the AR piece, was how can we enhance graphic recording or graphic facilitation so that a user can do a deeper dive into the content and maybe access reports or videos or other content that supports it and backs it up in a sense. And some of that we got into doing clickable infographics. That's sort of an example I can share here in the chat of a clickable infographic that brings up more content. So this is essentially what we're trying to do using AR as an example. All right. Helpful to get a good sense of terminology, I think, off the bat. A lot of these terms are confused or mixed up or used interchangeably. Extended reality is the umbrella term for all these different virtual ways of working. Augmented reality being on this spectrum where technology shows you something, a digital overlay. Mixed reality is where you might be wearing some goggles and seeing it in your environment and interacting with it. Virtual reality is where you're wearing a full headset that immerses you in a completely different virtual environment. So keeping those terms in mind is really helpful as we go through this. And this is more of a visual example of what augmented reality looks like versus virtual reality. That's me wearing a headset and doing some scribing in VR. And then mixed reality being a little bit more of that blended approach. And personally, if I was to project where this is going, I think that mixed reality is probably our future, being a nice blend of the two. And we can show you some examples later on as well, what that looks like. This is Apple's Circle Campus. They use AR to enhance their little 3D model versus virtual reality. These are the modes of working available to us now. AR versus virtual reality, and there are some mixed reality options coming out now too. So it is interesting. Augmented reality and facilitation or graphic facilitation, and how do those two things work together? This is sort of a little GIF or a little video of me demoing it and what it looks like on a graphic recording where it's triggered by the images in the graphic. And bringing more data or reports to it. So it's like a hidden layer for people to discover. And it's just been really magical to set that up for folks and how it enhances the experience of the graphics as well. And the beauty of it is active even beyond the live graphic recording. So if the client has it on display in their offices, it's still interactive well after the event. Oh, very cool. Philip put a really neat little merge cube link in there. We're actually going to show you some merge cube in a second here too. Museums are using it a lot. You'll see that paintings come into life, interactive exhibits, more and more. It's really quite fascinating to see how quickly it is evolving. And so this is just a little bit of a summary of some of the things you can show using it. Obviously graphs, statistics, charts, headshots, videos, audio. And the interesting thing about audio and how we're actually exploring this with a client right now. We're designing an infographic, a visual map essentially, and it's for blind and limited sight people and getting them engaged with that a little bit more. We're creating some audio triggers across it so that they can touch a tactile piece on the graphic and audio plays, or a visual description of what's on the poster plays, so that we're including more people in the experience than those who are sighted. So that's just an example of some of that really comes to life with this technology. It's really quite exciting and marvelous that way. So this is a large knowledge wall that we did just to show you that we've enhanced it with all these different videos and pieces that come out as well. You can also do scavenger hunts around the room with this type of work. So a lot of times we have a lot of problems finding wall space to hang our charts. Wouldn't it be interesting to hang them in virtual reality or augmented reality for that matter? Just other things for people to find. This is an example from our friends at Idea Inc., sorry, and they're based in Singapore. They're doing a lot of interesting work with AR too, so follow them on social media. They were so kind to share some examples with me. And more interestingly, this is something that came out of the pandemic. I was thinking, well, so much of my explorations of AR has been making things pop out of an actual physical graphic recording. What happens in the pandemic when we're not actually in these event spaces? Well, these digital graphics we've designed or created in live spaces could be presented in AR in someone's home office, so they can walk right up to a graphic and explore it almost as they would in a conference space. So getting them out of their seat and exploring the content rather than being stuck in front of a laptop screen watching us draw. So thinking about different ways of using it, not just in our typical event spaces. And that was a nice find from the pandemic. Another thing we've been exploring too is the geolocation piece. So with AR, and again, I'm going to go into more detail about how some of these work, but geolocation is where you set up almost a gallery walk based on coordinates that you input into the program you're using. And then someone might do a nature walk or a reflective walk, and the graphic recordings might pop up along that walk, or other prompts or ideas you want to share or have them think about. And you can set this up potentially for each participant in their location, out their front door even, or in a specific location that they might journey to if you're having a session in the same location. So it's really fascinating. I quite like this option too, in the blend of a reflective walk with the content and not being limited to just the event space or Zoom for that matter. We did this as part of a public awareness campaign, or a nonprofit was doing some activism around old growth forests here on Vancouver Island. So this is something they were using where this pops up in this location about old trees and ancient trees. So very cool stuff. And of course, timelines. This is one we did for IFPP last year. Posters that are pre-designed and hanging in a public space, hanging in an office, can be enhanced with augmented reality as well. Just some examples. Actually, this really neat one from Idea Inc. is a little business card that comes to life. I'm seeing a lot of people doing the business card thing too. So it's pretty cool. A lot of this bringing to life of content that we've illustrated. And this is our lovely merge cube that Philip mentioned. I'm really curious to how, because I haven't actually done a ton of exploration into it, but as you can see, it's a little paper cube you print. You could print this at home as well. There's a website here that I'm going to paste into the chat, and explore this yourself. It's free and interactive. You're holding the solar system and you click and turn and discover it. So I'm fascinated to see how that changes in terms of storytelling and what we might do with maybe a full-size cube that lives in a conference space, or little cubes that are on each table, and how might we manipulate them with groups. Yeah, it's delightful to see these things, and that they can be programmed and changed to whatever content you want. So I'm very curious to hear what Philip's done. That's great. Yeah, so in a nutshell, those are just an overview of some of the different formats and ways we've been working. A lot of really cool stuff is being done. And again, this is constantly changing in terms of accessibility and new apps coming out there. I'm going to pause for any questions or thoughts or reactions to what we just walked through here. Feel free to unmute or raise your hand, whatever you wish. And it's okay if you're still no questions or you're percolating on things. Yeah, thanks, Rachel. It is super cool stuff. I'm really hopeful that our industry is curious about it and wants to explore, because we need more people exploring it. There's only one of me, and there's only one of Idea Inc. for that matter in these spaces. So to give you a sense of how it's done and what is available for apps, I think might be helpful. Give you a little bit of a starting place. There are two general formats of AR. There is the app-based approach, and there is the web-based approach. The app means that you need to download an app to view it. The web-based means all a user has to do is go to a specific website in order to view the AR. It prompts it to open directly in their phone. There's no download required. So of these two options, definitely the web-based approach is more accessible when we're talking about conference settings or people just walking up to a graphic that's on display in a public space or office space is more accessible. App-based is definitely fine if it's set up in the right context. So you might be working with an intimate group of people and you can walk them through that process to download an app that you've set up to work with AR. So the context is really key to considering which is the right approach. And I have to say, app-based will be more stable as well. Web-based is relying on the WebXR technology, which can, it's working itself out, depending on whatever you're using and what you're trying to do. So keeping that in mind is really important. And the types of AR, we can share these slides with you too, because I know there's a lot of content here. But from left to right, we've got marker-based. And what that means is that the AR is triggered by little codes or symbols that you've placed across your graphic or that you've provided on your poster that people need to scan. And that little symbol is what anchors the AR. It's for the image to pop up or the data you're showing. Image-based means that rather than having a little symbol, we've designed the AR so it's triggered by the graphics you drew or the graphics in your infographic or whatever you've designed. So rather than finding symbols, they just have to scan their phone across the graphic and it pops out of the illustrations you've drawn. And to be honest, that is what I have been aiming for the last 2 years of my explorations, is figuring out how to do that, because that is, I feel, the most important seamless way of doing it, image-based. So, and that's what we've done. And it's exciting. And then of course, location-based, doing the walkthrough on our reflection walk, and world tracking. So world tracking is very similar to like the location-based, but world tracking means that you place it anywhere in the space. So if I sent you a graphic recording to view in AR, you would place it somewhere in your office or your home and then walk around it in your space. So it's not triggered by any codes or imagery. You're the one who places it. So yeah, that's a bit of an overview of the different types and formats. Yes, Ryan.
Actually, I thought that Nevada had a question earlier.
Okay, yes, please. I want to pause for questions as they come up.
No, I just wanted to it just felt like there was empty space and I wanted to say that that was really cool. So I just wanted to support it. That's all I was going to come on and say.
Hooray. Thank you, Nevada.
And I was curious.
Yes.
Yeah, so the visuals are awesome. I'm curious, is audio available? Once you get up to that, is that an available piece too?
In terms of experiencing audio when there's something that pops out of a graphic or like in the AR?
So if you're using a phone and you're walking and all of a sudden you see an image pop up, is there audio that goes with that?
Yes, you can have audio coded with it, which is, I mean, I love that because it just creates more of an environment or an experience for people. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So this is our big list. Again, this is from hundreds of hours of research and experimentation as to the different options that I have found are good ones to pursue or work well. Again, they may not be the right fit for everybody, so you have to kind of keep that in mind. Don't feel like you have to know how to do everything. It's all about what works best for you. So AR.js is probably the most, I guess, robust piece to use because it's free. In terms of cost, there's nothing. Investment of time is needed though, because it is code-based JavaScript. Learning how to use that, I can put a little article into the chat if there are keeners who want to explore it and test it. I don't come from a coding background. I don't have any computer science, nothing. And I spent my time to learn it. And I also worked with, thanks, yeah, that's perfect. I don't know how you had that link, Brian. But yes, it's if you have somebody who knows JavaScript, work with them, they can help you. I had to do that in my initial exploration of this. And this is what I started out using in my first use of augmented reality, because there weren't very many apps out there. And this is the actual code on GitHub. You have to set up a GitHub hosting site for it and work and manipulate and update the images there. So I won't go into that detail because it's insane. But for those who are keen, have a look. Worldcast is probably, I would say, the most usable for most folks in terms of plug and play. I've put some links into chat there too. They have a studio that is quite user-friendly. They have a little tutorial at the beginning that you walk through. That's funny, Brian. And you can definitely set it up. There's a world tracking option. I believe there's a geo tracking option, if I'm recalling correctly, an image-based trigger option. So using images in your graphics to make it work. So it's definitely a really fun piece that came out, I think about a year ago. It's owned by IBM, actually. And so I should mention as well, a lot of these apps I'm exploring are through the lens of not only accessibility for users and those who are wanting to do it, but also stability and privacy and how the data is being used. If you're using the JavaScript approach, AR.js, it's open, it's everywhere, so don't put confidential things out there. If you're hosting it, say, behind Zap AR, which I'll get into in a second, that is more private, but read these terms yourself if you are working with confidential information for your clients. So that's a really important caveat. Zap AR is another fantastic little one, which I think we have the code. Yeah, here's the link for you guys. It is probably one of the biggest platforms out there in terms of use. So there's 8th Wall is a big company that does AR. Zap AR is almost like the competitor, less expensive than 8th Wall if you're going the subscription route. So Zap AR is a subscription service, but personally it's the one we're using the most because it's stable, it's most flexible. I'll be showing you some examples of why that's the case, but it's my favorite of all time. And then, of course, we've got Sketchfab, which is just a little simple 3D viewing kind of software for looking at models. I've put graphic recordings into them. It works fine for presenting things in that world tracking environment where you want to show the big graphic in somebody's office. Just have it pop up on their phone. So that's an example of seeing a sneaker in AR. So you can see what it's like. You just go to their site and tap on the little AR button if you've got your smartphone in front of you to try it out. So in a nutshell, those are the 3 examples. This is an example of AR.js in action on a map. This is a mock-up, a demo we were doing for a client, so it wasn't the final product, but it plays video, it shows headshots, and you see the little symbols behind are what triggers the AR and anchors it in place. So that's how we've been using it in that respect. And the nice thing about that too is you can move the symbols around. So you might have a graphic recording or a graphic facilitation environment where you do want to tell a story or shape a path with people. And I think that is a great little option to consider too. And a lot of these can be coded in real time. Like when I mean coding, I mean updated in real time. So if a speaker references a concept and you need to go find it, you can update the AR so that it's reflective of whatever they've referenced, a stat or a map or a report. So it's you can glue them on. You can put little, I actually use a lot of removable tape so I can move it around. I've also laminated them so they're super durable for the more interactive sessions we did before the pandemic and needed to move things around a lot more and create a timeline. So it's really convenient. This is an example of how I had it set up in an actual conference. I don't know, it depends on the conference, how you're setting this up, what makes the most sense. There was only one of me at the conference. I really wanted to try this out and the client was open and keen because they were a tech conference and they said, yeah, go for it. I had to set up a little sign next to each graphic that helped people through the process. I don't always recommend that if people are new to AR, the audience is maybe not super tech savvy. It takes them a little bit to figure it all out. Best to have, maybe staff or support people at going around the gallery walk and just supporting people with it. But again, it depends on how you're doing it. This is the coding approach for using AR JavaScript, not necessary with some of these other apps I'll show you. So as I mentioned, Zap AR is our current favorite. I think it's about $60 a month, but it's not really anything you can't pass on to clients or that sort of thing. So it's not an unreasonable subscription cost. But it's triggered by the images in the actual graphic recording. It can do geolocation stuff. It can do pretty much anything you can imagine, which is really marvelous. I was going to show you a little live demo. I always get nervous about live demos because I'm never able to just, I never usually throw people into this, but if you're willing and interested to give it a shot, this is how we've set it up for this demo. We don't usually do multiple codes. This is just for this purpose. But if you scan the QR code on the left, and then it will prompt you, and you'll go to a website. It'll take you there either in Safari or Google Chrome, whatever you're using. And then you click through the allows. It'll say, can I use your camera? Can I use your orientation? Say yes. And then scan the little symbol on the right. And then I'll switch the slides when everybody's ready. I'll give you a few seconds to open that up. You should just see a camera view almost in your screen. All right, I'll go back for those who might not have it ready, but this is the first image from the graphic recording, which I've blown up here. And if you hold your phone, if you've got it open on the Zap AR app that we just opened up, you should see a little fire data piece pop up or a graph come up. So I'll give you a second to try that out. Oh, great, Kathy's seeing it, fantastic. And if you see searching, just hold it over the image. It's cycling through some of that. I didn't set it up perfect for this. We have our little searching going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because it's looking for images as we cycle through. And then there's a second one. If you keep holding it up, this is a new one that'll pop up, our fire triangle.
Can you go back to the symbol real quick?
Yes, I can. There's our symbol.
Thank you.
For those who might want the QR code and the symbol to activate. And I'm going to go back to our fire triangle. Some of these are a little small because I had to enlarge it for this purpose. We don't usually do this through screens like this, but just so you get a taste of it, you can have words trigger the AR as well. It's really quite a fun way of working and just very fluid when you can code multiple images to one event like this. So it's fantastic for that, rather than having separate QR codes or whatever for each. So yeah. Anyways, give you a little taste of that. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to switch now to, yeah, there's Brian's showing some of it. I've switched. Here, I'll switch back. Perfect. Yeah, so that's how fast can fire spread? So now we've got a little diagram. And again, if you were seeing this on a big graphic, it would be much bigger than that tiny little image you're seeing. So you could actually pan across it properly. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. All right. So Worldcast is the one that I mentioned that is pretty accessible for most anyone. You don't have to have a subscription to use it. It's owned by IBM, so it's run on some pretty solid stuff. They have a great little studio. Very much encourage you guys to play with this because it's, whoops, I direct messaged Brian for some reason. That's why you kept having, okay, there you go. That's to everybody now. This is the little Worldcast studio that you can just open in your browser. It'll prompt you through, oh, what do you want to run? Do you want to do an image-based one? Do you want to do a world tracking? Choose it. It has little tutorials, very user-friendly. And this is just what you're seeing on screen here, kind of the way you just set it up and export it and away you go. So it's super fun to use. So I do encourage trying that one out. The piece about it, though, is that rather than what I just showed you with Zap AR, that one you do one code and you just scan across, you can see all the images pop up. This one, it's one code per image. So if I want to show my big stat come up, it has to have a corresponding QR code or whatever next to each one. So that's not so great fluid piece to it. It's not super great in that way, but it is fun for just exploring and trying out. Perfect. There's some questions in the chat. Great. All right. So I'm going to show you a little demo of Worldcast. You don't have to do it. Because this one is a world tracking experience. So rather than seeing something pop out of your screen, like what we just experienced with Zap AR, this one is placing a graphic recording in your studio, a 6-foot tall one. So it's best to do it when you have a lot of space around you and you can move around it. But this is just showing you when I'm going to show you the QR code on the next page, it prompts you through these 3 steps to place a graphic in your studio or however you want. So if you want to try it out later, screenshot this QR code and give it a shot. It's yeah, it's super fun. It's different when you get on your feet and move around a graphic or any graphic facilitation you've created. It's really marvelous than being stuck in front of a screen. So just giving you a sense of what that looks like. Feel free to try that out yourselves. I believe I put the links in the chat. What did I say about security? Nevada has a good question. Yeah, so I just encourage you do your reading into any app that you are using around how your data is being used. Just like how people, a lot of our clients have questions around Mural or Miro. What happens to the data? Who's hosting it? Those that are privacy concerned, you do your homework into what app is which. Worldcast is open, kind of free, but they do have a privacy statement, I believe, on their site. I read through it. It looked pretty good to me, but do your own assessment of that. Zap AR is more of a subscription service, so you're paying for them to host it in a more secure environment. But again, read through those things and find what makes the most sense. I'd say most of our clients don't have as big privacy concerns because most of the content is public anyways, if you're sharing research or stats or reports and that sort of stuff, or headshots, like not as big of a deal. I haven't run into it as much, but definitely something to keep in mind. And Sketchfab, this is just a fun one. I shared the link previously in the chat, but if you want to just see what it's like, it's a great way, just like what I showed with the link with Worldcast, where you're seeing a graphic in virtual space. This is another way of doing it, is through Sketchfab. And their app is very stable, so it ends up not being, we don't run into as many glitches with it, so it works really well that way. Yeah, okay, so those are the three main ones. Oh, I was going to show you actually this example. It takes a second to load here. So yeah, this is a three-dimensional mountain that we designed in virtual reality. You can design this sort of stuff in some of the virtual reality apps. There's also three-dimensional design software out there too. But something really neat that you can walk around, that people can experience and see their goals up a mountain, and challenges or rock slides they need to watch out for. So that was the purpose of this little engagement. Any questions so far of what we've shown? Pretty neat stuff. I get excited about a lot of this stuff. All right.
Tanya, on this last one, on that mountain, what would the user need to be able to see that? Because I'm remembering Brian, like the headsets and everything, and everybody has to be in the headsets. Has it evolved?
This is a view through my phone. This is just through my smartphone. So okay, when I'm talking about them experiencing it and walking around it, they're using their phone to move around it. You could, if they have a virtual reality headset, they could do the same. But most people, it's the phone-based thing right now. Yeah. All right. And a few other apps that I thought I'd share. I don't endorse any of these. Spark AR is the Facebook app out there for AR. Those of you who might be okay with using it, I'm not. AR Code is another free one out there. Again, I couldn't find much about the privacy piece on it or the usage of the content. So that's why I'm like, I don't really want to use you. And then Adobe Aero is Adobe's attempt at AR. However, it only works for, I believe, Apple devices. So that was kind of a no-go for me when I want everyone to be able to use it on Android as well. All right. I was going to touch on a little bit of virtual reality because it is another branch that we're exploring. Attempt at AR. Yes, it's true. We are exploring virtual reality as well. I recognize too that there's a bit of a curve in terms of the development of it and accessibility, but I think it is important for our field to know about virtual reality and maybe be a bit aware of this because it is coming. Virtual event spaces, we've seen such a huge change in the last 18 months. There's a lot being put out there in terms of enhancing even hybrid events or virtual events entirely. There are colleagues of ours that are working in virtual reality. I mean, Brian is one. I know Phil is doing a lot of explorations. Matthew at Sketch Group in Australia, he's actually done live graphic recording in VR, very cool. He's got some good blog posts about it too. So, you know, it is something that is being asked for in a niche industry, but I think it will expand. A lot of people are talking about how this is not just for gaming. It is commercial and enterprise level. The market is huge and the potential is there too. So keep that in mind. There's two types of kind of devices. And when we're thinking about VR, there's the kind of Microsoft HoloLens, which is making a mixed reality experience. And I'll show you some examples in a second. And then there's like the full headset you put on. I have mine here that is just like big and it covers your face and you're in an entirely different environment. So, it is amazing and immersive for those of you who have tried it. This is an example of Microsoft HoloLens in action. You're working with colleagues, you're working on a digital piece or something that's represented in that mixed reality environment. Very cool potential there for what it can do. And we saw that one. And I should mention as well, spatial.io. Those of you who follow me on social media have probably seen me talk about it a few times. That is a fantastic little software. They have a great Slack channel as well for support and those who want to try it out and learn it. They're very eager to have more facilitators involved with it. And this is an example of how it looks in a mixed reality environment where you might have two people in the space and somebody joining virtually, but it is also a fully virtual environment as well. And this little video that I put together kind of walks you through what it looks like. Yeah, spatial is really quite fun. And you can access it through your smartphone or your iPad as well. So you don't have to try it out just in VR. This video that I walked through, I set it up so that we had two participants joining by iPhone and iPad and myself in VR. So the experience is quite interesting. You can move through it almost like a game. And I know Angie, I've had a call with her from Brian's team around presenting art in this environment that you can move through even just on your laptop. So it is quite interesting, these spaces that are emerging. Microsoft Mesh was launched in March 2021, and this is their sort of equivalent of spatial as well. So these things are coming, and it's really, I do think this is going to be the future, is that mixed reality engagement and collaboration across the world in these spaces. Tilt brush is how I've been doing the live graphic recording. It is it's put out by Google, no longer supported by Google, unfortunately, but you can use it. You can actually use it for free now in the VR space. And it's great for just drawing and creating environments. I've also, that one I showed of the mountain that I brought into AR in my office, that was drawn in this program. So that's it's a great little program there. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on kind of clunky drawing. Yeah, it takes some time. I'm not going to lie. Tilt brush is not like oh yeah, I'm just going to start drawing. You've got to learn how to use it. It's totally different when you're trying to write in a 3D environment. I got it down after a lot of practice, but it's like your depth of field, you're not writing on something firm. One of the nice things about spatial is they do have, I believe, a whiteboard you can write on. So there are different options out there if you need that flat surface, which I think they hopefully evolve to a little bit. But yeah, some benefits and considerations that you should always consider when using the AR or any of these apps is the audience, of course. Does it make sense for them? Are they comfortable using it? And how will it enhance the content? I want to emphasize that it is a fun thing and there's that risk of being gimmicky. So I'm trying to always use it thoughtfully. It should enhance the storytelling, enhance the content and the experience for people. And as well, doing some testing time, not just throwing people in there and expecting it to work, but doing your testing ahead of time, whether you're doing it or whether you're working with a partner or somebody else who's more into that end of things. All right. And of course, access and inclusion. So when we were doing this at live events, we always had little iPads for people to use if they had really old phones or it just wasn't working. It's not as much of an issue these days because phones are advancing so quickly. and incorporating audio. And like I mentioned with the project we're working on with people who are blind or experiencing vision loss, having tactile touch points on the graphic, or if they're image triggered, that they can have that audio description happen as well. So really important to think access and inclusion as well. And another challenge being VR adoption, technology, cost, and value being the key things that, you know, we're at this sort of inflection over time where the access is like the barrier to access is going down, but the uptake is slower to emerge. So we might be over here in this diagram, but once that access happens, say for example, Apple comes out with their AR glasses, which has been rumored for like ever, will that kick things up a notch in terms of more people doing it, just like the smartphone did back in the 2000s, and how that launched us into a new way of working, and it's everywhere now. So keeping that in mind too. I'm going to pause for some questions or any thoughts from the group around the challenges or the benefits.
I got a question for you, Tanya.
Yeah.
So you mentioned Apple. Can Macs handle VR yet?
No, they cannot.
Okay.
I think you know the answer to that.
I wasn't sure. Maybe my data would have been, you know, a little bit dated.
I mean, the M1 chip just came out on like the Mac, which is their equivalent of Intel. I think their new chip that Apple's putting out. But as far as I know, it's all PC based stuff. So you have to have a PC computer if you're running VR that is wired into the computer. I'll get into the details in a second about the differences, but there's headsets that are standalone where you just put them on, but you don't need a computer to run them. That's the Oculus environment. So Facebook has their Oculus headsets and they're about $400 and you put them on and they work. There's other more robust headsets like the Valve Index, which requires a PC to run. And just because it's so huge and it's got a lot going for it, but I think it'll trend more towards being standalone. You don't need a PC or anything to run it. So yeah, good question. Any other questions out there? Yeah, Nevada had an interesting comment in the chat about when to jump on the bandwagon. And it's yeah, there's early adopters, just like with anything. And I also think it needs that sort of push, like what happened with Zoom. A lot of us were working on Zoom for years before the pandemic happened. But then when Zoom happened, you know, there was that learning curve for a lot of our clients and audiences. So yeah, it is about that too. Sarah, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's like I'm so excited about this, and I was really excited when you did the demo at IFEP as well. And like I'm really interested in diving into this, but it's hard to know where to start. Yeah. So I would just love your advice on like, okay, where do you want to just like dabble a little bit to see if this is something to take further?
Yes, and that's the thing, and I mentioned that at the top too, is I presented you with like a ton of different options and apps, but don't feel you have to go full bore into, say, some of the more complex ones or some of the more stable ones. I can't even list how many apps there are right now for AR, and there's more every day. So I would encourage doing a little search on whatever app store you're using, and it will have some examples. There's Paint Space is another really good example of a fun one to use. The Worldcast is super user-friendly, but also robust. Like it's not something that's unstable that you couldn't not use it with a client. So that's why I was encouraging the Worldcast as a good starting place, I think, for most folks. But know that there are tons of different ones out there to explore and try out for yourself too. And if you're wanting to get more into it, finding partners and networks and people who are doing this like me or like some of our friends that want to do this and want to partner and team up and support this type of work too. So yeah, I think in a nutshell, that's essentially, I think, the right approach.
If I can suggest a light way to get into it, Sarah, is that there's plenty of just VR, AR apps for your phone, right? One of them that I can think of is called Walter's Cube. But there's a lot of things out there that you can just create, you can print the markers. Sketchfab actually has this. And so without even using the PC or getting into coding, there's a lot of things that are out there that are available just for your phone, especially if you've got one of those, you know, new LiDAR sensors on it that can look at depth and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Sketchfab. Thank you, Brian. That's another really good one to play with and toy around with too. Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions from the group or thoughts? And it's okay too if you're seeing challenges as well. I'm curious to hear anything from everybody. All right. I thought it would be interesting to just, maybe have a moment for a little bit of a breakout discussion, 10 minutes or so to chat just one-on-one with your peers. I'm curious to hear creative ways of using this in your own work, things that we might not have thought of. When we did this at IFBP, somebody came back from breakouts and was like, at the time, Black Lives Matter protests were happening quite a lot in DC. And the suggestion was, wouldn't it be cool to have a living wall where people could update AR videos of different things they've witnessed or things they're seeing in these protests as a way of embedding that in the public space. So I thought that was an interesting suggestion as well. All right. Okay, Brian, I think you were going to.
Yeah, I'll launch them about, I think in your email, you said anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes.
Yeah,
How
10
long would you like to do it?
Let's go 12 minutes.
12 it is. Okay, so we'll
Perfect.
do some breakouts. See you back in about 12 minutes.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. I think we've all back here. I see 23. We gained a participant. That's exciting. All right. So I'm curious to hear, anybody want to come off mute in terms of sharing some highlights or insights from your breakout for the 12 minutes, or put them in chat would be wonderful too. Brian just put some content in chat around building ecosystems, like liberating structures, giving objects, putting QR tags in Mural, exactly, looking at different paint and color options. Any other thoughts from breakouts and opportunities for sharing creatively?
Yeah, we did not come that far in our group, but the thing what crosses my mind, that's why I said maybe it's too short time, but was, for example, that you work with a, how do you call it, a tag or so, like, and put it in a certain space. And for example, if you enter a space where the Scrum Masters are together and you do you did some graphic recording, that you push the graphic recording from the last meeting to the people who enter the room so they can quickly prepare.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's a wonderful example.
Yeah.
I see some great content in the chat. I can't even keep up. It's fantastic. Interpretive devices for parks was shared. Living timelines. Yes, I see so much potential for the timeline piece, sharing histories and images, videos. Yeah, and the histories of a location. There's some really interesting work that's being done. I'm based on Lekwungen territory in BC, and some of our fellow nations up north are doing some histories work around the histories of the land, but using AR and mixed reality so that you could go for a hike and experience these things and see them pop up. It's just beautiful, beautiful use of the technology. Excellent. Any other thoughts from folks? Anybody? And I should also mention, those of you who are virtual reality gurus or others that have experience in this, please do speak up and share your thoughts as well.
Yeah, we had an idea in our group. So I'm working with a museum right now, and everything is kind of closed because of COVID, and they can't have visitors. And so obviously there's lots of conversations going on right now about like, how do you extend the museum space into other people's spaces so they can like experience it at home or out on the streets in their neighborhood or whatever. But then there's also some opportunities that I'm thinking about now because of this workshop around like kind of recreating the museum and doing like gallery walks of, we're doing a speaker series. So doing graphic recordings of those speaker series and then having each of the images available for people to kind of peruse on their own time while they can't go into the physical space, but then also once it's open, again, like recreating that same gallery walk experience in the real space too. So it could be both.
Yeah, That's a really fantastic example, Sarah, especially in the lens of art and experiencing art in AR wherever you are. I think that could be really amazing, a gallery walk. Very cool.
So it's something that is occurring to me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can, Sarah. Hi.
We're having trouble a little earlier. Good to see you, Tanya.
Yes.
And thank you so much for doing this. So this inspires me. I am involved in a conference every year. Actually, Terrell's taken over for me this year, but that is kind of is team building, leadership development. And it occurs to me that, you know, in the VP of leadership development always wants these people to like learn the theories and of like leadership development and lots of details. He's really loves lots of details. But we can only kind of give people like little chunks at a time. So I thought it'd be really cool if during the conference, there were like these markers around where people, if they were interested, could go up and have the VR experience of like really embodying what these leadership development concepts are in VR. So I think that that's really inspiring, and I will consider that for next year. And if that is the case, can I hire you to do all the programming for this?
Yes, I was going to say, I mean, I'm keen to do this and support this work wherever it's needed. So I am here as a collaborator too. So that sounds exciting.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and to that piece around making it almost an emergent experience as well. We're doing an event in probably about 6 months for a group that is doing journey mapping in healthcare. And they are doing some different explorations around what happens if we change this aspect of a patient's care, how does that change the story? And so we're going to have that story revealed in AR, and that is going to be an emergent map that we're creating together. So there's different ways of using this in storytelling that I just find so fascinating.
So is there something, would you ever do a project, or have you done a project, or might you possibly do a project where I could ghost you in some way to like come up and
Yes.
get like, I literally like fly to Canada to just figure this out.
There you go. I know. And that's the thing, is that it's really, you got to learn by doing with a lot of this. And I'm not kidding when I've sunk hundreds of hours into this and testing what would work best. So it is, yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun too. Yeah, definitely. Any other thoughts or ideas from people? I see the chat is like going crazy. So, but I do call on you folks to speak out as well. We're facilitators here. We should be able to do that.
I can make one quick comment. I'm kind of speaking the obvious, but I think the thing we came down to is there's going to be some tech that's going to become the breakout tech for the general public. So like we're all on Zoom, everybody understands Zoom's the place to go. And so I think Zap AR stands out. Tilt Brush stands out for me. Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about Tilt Brush?
Yeah, Tilt Brush.
You can tell us about us?
Yeah, so it exists in the VR environment. It's now free to use. You don't have to buy it, but it is for drawing, literally in VR. And I've got a lot of examples on my site of me working in it, and it's really quite magical. And for those of you who have experienced VR, there's nothing I can do to describe how immersive and amazing it is. And that's where I see so much potential there too, in terms of what we can create experiences for our clients to move through and explore different environments drawn in Tilt Brush, for example. And one thing too is keeping in mind, I mean, the Oculus, which is the headset you don't need a computer for, it's $400, $350 if you're American. That's Canadian dollars, I think. It's not an unaffordable cost when we consider our phones are $1,000 or something. So keeping in mind that there are these things out there that we can start exploring and playing with. And there's also VR cafes in a lot of cities where you can go and spend $10, $15 to try out these experiences. And I do encourage, that's where I started before I decided to jump in and get one. So yeah. Yeah, cafe is how I got hooked too. Yeah.
Can I ask a technical question?
Yeah.
So Jill had a really great idea, and I immediately saw an application for books that are already published. If you wanted somebody to be able to point their camera to a graphic that's in there that might go to an exercise or something like that. Is that
Yes.
possible?
Yes, it is. And people are doing that. And I'm so excited about that because I have a passion for writing as a side career. And I want to do that with graphic novels as well and have them come to life or have them go to a resource link or something to download. Absolutely. People are doing that with storybooks. If you Google that, there's so many amazing examples out there too.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic. I'm just scrolling through the chat here to see what I missed. Yeah, there's the conversation around books and fine art. All right, thank you, Yuli, for that lovely comment. Brian, was there anything you wanted to share about VR? You're working in it a fair amount, or you have in the past.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Such great expertise.
Thank you. I wanted to share just a couple of use cases for really virtual reality facilitation. Now, let me just say this: the downside to VR is that you got to pull on a headset, and that is all you see. So there's a bit of a barrier to entry. You have to have the headset in order to be able to work in it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that other people can't benefit from it. I mean, we show up and don't necessarily share our markers the whole time, right? So here's a few things that actually me and Heather and a few other people on the phone have used VR for. So one of them is graphic recording. And this is what Tilt Brush can look like if you're using it. So you have these couple of wands, and I'll just show you what a wand looks like right here. So you've got a couple of wands and you just draw in thin air, and it's pretty amazing. By the way, bonus points if you can guess exactly what I'm drawing here. And Sarah, I think you already did, so that would be cheating. Oh, give it a minute. Let's see. And that's the video that's doing that. So it is, when you're doing this in 3D, it can be a little tricky to get your head out of the 2D space. I found that when I started, I was drawing flat, right? And I had to sort of break my mental model to draw in 3 directions like that. Okay, anybody know this one? Bueller?
Graphic game plan.
Yay, got it, nice job. And Kathy had it too. Okay, so that's a graphic game plan. You can bring it to events. So that is Guido Neuland using Tilt Brush right there. And then somebody else in the lower right-hand corner, don't know who that is, looking fabulous as always. It's Brandy. So it's kind of a fun draw that you can bring in. And then you can also just turn around, hook it up to a big screen and do some graphic recording in it. A few other things, a few other quick use cases. Gallery space. Tanya already talked about this one before, but once you've done some things, done some graphic recording, you drop them into a gallery space, and then you can export it using something like Sketchfab so that people can just pivot through it using their phones. VR device learning videos. I'll be honest with you, I haven't got a whole lot of calls for this, but you can export one of these Tilt Brush models as a 3-dimensional stereoscopic video. And that way, if somebody else does have a device, even if it's something as simple as Google Cardboard, they can drop the phone in there and be able to see something in 3D. Okay. Explainer videos, doing some 3-dimensional explainer videos. I use it a lot for process design. So if I'm designing a very complicated facilitation or an event, I can just put some paper mock-ups into Tilt Brush and then physically walk my clients through the space and say, this is what the experience is going to be like when we all get together. Okay. So just making it that much easier to explain, here's what it's going to look like when we're in the room. 3D mind mapping. I mean, just imagine being able to map in three dimensions. You can do some prototyping. This is a VR tool. It's called Google Blocks. So if you're working in Agile or product design, they make it very easy. So somebody had mentioned prototyping is complicated. Not with this, it's not. It's very easy to shape objects. I think it's even a lot faster than using some of the 3D design programs out there like SketchUp, okay? And then my favorite way to do this is actually doing live facilitation. So sometimes I'll just throw on the headset and facilitate live. In this case, I really have more of the role of the tech host and the scribe, and somebody else is facilitating. But at the bottom of this, you can see that's my view. And what it is like I get a wraparound view of 10 monitors. That way I can keep my eyes on a lot of different things at once. And what we were doing is we were editing a strategy graphic. And so the participants were generating content on their own, dropping it into a Google Drive. I was pulling objects out of that Google Drive and dropping it into the illustration. So we were doing live updates on it. Okay. And then another way to do live facilitation, I really like to use AltSpace VR. I'd mentioned this in the breakout, but I like the kinds of platforms or the kinds of programs that are cross-platform. So whether you have a VR or an AR headset or not, or a PC or a Mac or just a phone, you can access these things. To me, if you're looking at the different platforms to actually do facilitation, cross-device accessibility is really the make or break way to do it. Okay, and that's it. Just a couple of use cases on that. Thanks for letting me talk, Tanya.
You have such experience in that, so that is awesome, Brian. Thank you.